Okay, I've hit the live button. So, David, we're live. This is an impromptu stream, everybody. Zero preparation. David messaged me about like 6 minutes ago. And I was going to schedule it for some other time in the week or whatever. But we might as well just do it live. And because I've no idea what to title it, I've cheekily called it SJJMAS number 1. Because I might do some more of these. Who knows? So it could be
can you call it SJJ Tide?
Tide.
Yeah.
Well, I know you don't. You don't. But that reminds me of leaving like a scummy mark in the bathtub. So I can't rip off Yule because everybody does Yule. So we might just have a look.
Of course you can. Of course you can. I mean, you know, this is Mjolnir the movie. Well, I'm on my Mjolnir the movies account because, of course, my David Yorkshire account has been zapped and it no longer exists on YouTube. So Mjolnir or something.
Well, look, suffice it to say, everybody, David disavows the Christian message in the title, but we'll figure that out later on.
Yeah.
So, David, in your message to me, you said something about you wanted to talk about the Anglo Gang debacle yesterday. What's on your mind? Let me have it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something that I've always said about Brutus or Alfred or whatever the fuck he calls himself these days. He's typical of an alt-writer. He's had so many political positions. He moves every 6 months or something like that. He shifts position, and then he starts screaming against the position that he used to have. Now, he used to be a raging Nazi. Now he's calling everybody who doesn't worship Churchill Nazis. Including me, who has never been.
I forgot that you were called out on the stream. I did intervene at that point.
Yes, I heard that, and thank you very much for that. But this guy, he does know better, and that's the thing. He's basically libeling me. Because
hold on. Right, we need to just hold on. Because you're putting me in an awkward position here with my co-host now. So obviously you're very upset about my co-host, about what he did on the show. Anyway, make your point.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what he did. He libeled me, called me a Nazi, which is exactly what Jerry Gable used to do. In fact, he called me a Nazi twice in the same sentence in an article he wrote about me once, I remember, and which was nice. It's good to upset these people when they start screaming Nazi. It's because they've hit the heights of hysteria. But that's the same with Brutus, isn't it? I mean, if he's genuine, and I'm not saying that he is genuine, I'm not saying that he isn't. But frankly, either he's not genuine or he's barkingly insane, or he's another one of these people who tries to say the most extreme thing to get subscribers, and that's very much a part and parcel of the alt-right, to be quite honest. That they'll say the most extreme and nonsensical things just to get people interested in their channel or whatever. Something that I've never done.
All right, so obviously this is awkward for me because Bruce is my co-host, and through doing the show, it's becoming like a friend, online friend, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, we do the show together now. We've done 20 of them or more, however many we've done. So my instincts, David or Brutus. Because, of course, I don't know Brutus outside the show. We talk a little bit off air.
Yeah, it's the same with us. I don't know you, you don't know me, and that stuff.
Yeah. But he is my co-host, and so I do have I feel like I have a better feel for Brutus than most people. So the Brutus that I've got to know behind the scenes is the same character that you see on the show. He seems earnest. He seems genuine to me. When the fact that when he uses the word Nazi, what I want you to understand, and I think he himself did, when I corrected him, he did in fact say, "Oh, okay then, my mistake." So let's give him that. Now, when he used the word Nazi, it's not done from like the left-wing point of view to label somebody a Nazi. He's just meaning people who he believes hold, National Socialist sympathies for the Third Reich.
Yeah, but I don't.
I know, and so that's why I corrected him. So that that is why I corrected him, and I said you have a nuanced take where you are against the Third Reich, but you also are not a Churchill fan. Right? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I don't know how anybody who knows anything about history can be a fan of Churchill. The Second World War saved him. The Second World War saved him, to be quite honest. Had it not been for the Second World War and his role that he played in it, which again has to be scrutinized, but had it been not for that war and his speeches, because really it was all about his speeches, he would have gone down as a footnote in history as a very corrupt politician and a completely untrustworthy man. He don't forget that he crossed the floor of the House of Commons several times. He went off with the Liberal Party, came back to the Conservative Party, and so on. And so he was completely distrusted by the majority of the House of Commons, which is why he didn't get listened to, of course, for so long. But when you said he was alone,
let me just say something about that first. That a lot of people aren't aware of. I'm sure you are. A lot of people aren't aware of the political climate that was going on post World War One. Obviously, in 1929, there was the stock market crash and the Great Depression in America, and effectively, what I'm trying to say is there was periods in the UK of governments of national unity. So, is it necessarily a like shocking thing that he could be seen to cross the House? Is what I'm suggesting. I don't know enough, but I know the political situation was a bit different back then.
Well, yeah, because he crossed it because he was purely self-interested.
Right.
And that was the thing. He did a lot for self-interest. He was implicated in the Marconi scandal, for example, although it was never proven, but he was brought to trial over it, particularly the libel trial of Cecil Chesterton, who wrote about it in the Eyewitness. And he was heavily implicated in the Zionist, in doing things for the people who were in charge of the Zionist movement. Don't forget that he procured a passport for Chaim Weizmann, the head of the Zionist movement, because Chaim Weizmann, he wrote off to, what do they call him, as the Postmaster General at the time, Herbert Samuel, to get him a passport. Now,
so let's talk about that a little. Let me get much of this is just like my own small amount of knowledge from the bit of digging I've done recently. But anyway, I'm fully aware that Churchill was very pro-Jewish because he represented, was it Manchester North? His constituency, Manchester North, I think. Anyway, some constituency in Manchester, which was effectively 1/3 Jewish, one of the most Jewish constituencies in the country. So it doesn't surprise me that Churchill was very pro-Jewish, for one, that he had Jewish interests in his mind in Parliament, that it is probably funded by Jews. But my contention about this is that pre Second World War, Zionism meant something very different, and effectively, naively, it meant finding somewhere else for the Jews to go other than being in Europe, other than living in European nations. It meant giving them somewhere else, a place over there to solve this Jewish, dare I say, problem, in countries, and say, go over there and give them this other place. And so it doesn't surprise me that he was Zionist, that he felt that this was a noble and an honourable cause, and that this was all very different to what Zionism is today.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But, and here's the but, it's how the Jews went about it. Now, they didn't just commit terrorist atrocities against the Palestinians. They committed terrorist atrocities against the British peacekeeping forces in mandatory Palestine. And this is big news. This was big news in the day. It's been swept under the carpet a lot. Don't forget that they murdered Lord Moyne during the Second World War, our ambassador our ambassador in mandatory Palestine. And as I say, this is during the Second World War when they're allegedly being persecuted. And Miami Virtues mentioned the King David Hotel, which is one of the big ones. There's also the bombing of the British Officers Club in Cairo, not Cairo. Cairo's in Egypt, of course. Where was it now? I can't remember. But anyway, you can look it up. The British Officers Club bombing. There were
this is all later.
Kidnappings, murders of British troops. Lots of bombings of railways, for example. As I said, there were many. They attempted to bomb the wedding in Jerusalem of I think it's the 8th Duke of Wellington, if I remember. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Youngs has said there, the sergeant's affair, absolutely. There's two young sergeants, 20-year-old, one called something Pace, and the other one was a Welsh name, I can't remember. But anyway, they didn't just take them away, torture them, and then hang them. They also booby-trapped the bodies so that anybody taking the bodies down would be maimed or killed as well as. So they did particularly nasty and despicable things. Don't forget that these people as well who were in Irgun and in the Haganah and in the Stern Gang and so on, they went from being terrorists to being the leaders of Mossad and to being the leaders of Israel as well. So there was one who died at the beginning. It was at the beginning of this year, the beginning of last year, who started out as a terrorist and ended up as a director of Mossad. Levy's the other word for Stern Gang, if I remember rightly. But anyway, there were lots of terrorist organizations. And so when people talk about terrorism and Palestinian terrorism and so on, well, they've been displaced essentially through terrorist means. So I have more sympathy with Palestine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not particularly sympathetic to either cause, but I have more sympathies with the Palestinians than I do with the Jews, particularly as the Jews, as I say, they committed terrorism against British peacekeeping forces in mandatory Palestine, and they basically stole that land. Now,
no, I get it, but let me just interject.
Now the thing is about Churchill is that coming back to Churchill, he knew all this. This, as I say, it's big news. So, he is a traitor to the British people.
Wait, what you're talking about there is post Second World War.
No. This was going on for throughout the 1930s.
Wait.
No, it was going on throughout the 1930s, throughout the war. So some of the terrorist organizations called an armistice. Some didn't, and as I say, that we ended up with Lord Moyne being assassinated. So you can look this up. You can look this up. This is this is mainstream stuff. If you bother to look into it, most people don't.
Okay. So accept your point. My understanding though is that initially, the Jewish question of sending the Jews to Palestine initially seemed like a naive, but honorable or just like whatever utilitarian way to solve the problem, of what to do with Jews.
It did, yeah. I agree with you. G.K. Chesterton also agreed with you.
Okay, and then they betrayed us, basically.
Yes, exactly. But they betrayed us from really sort of the late 1920s onwards. So this was well known. So it's all it's one thing to support it in just after the First World War or something like that. It's quite another to still be supporting it in the 1930s.
Right. But there was a lot going on in the 1930s. Maybe, I mean, because it's this place over there in Palestine. It's Arabs and Jews, trying to fucking sort to mess out, and it's a complicated thing. And you think maybe, but still, it might just be a good idea if we can just get Jews to settle there. And yes, they're not very, they're all whatever. I don't know how to explain this. I think that
you can't explain it. You can't explain it, especially when it's.
Well, I don't care, to be honest. I don't really care that much about the Palestine question. I'll be honest with you.
No, but it's not about the Palestine question. It's about the fact that they were murdering British servicemen and British civilians as well.
Right. Okay.
And they had also planned. What, the terrorist activities?
Yeah.
Late 20s.
Late 20s, right.
Against the British, anyway.
Okay.
Against the Palestinians earlier than that, but we're talking about the British question here, and so you cannot side with Churchill on his Zionist. They're not really principles, because he's doing it through self-interest, and he does a lot of things through self-interest. He shifts and he moves, and he has no sort of essence.
Let's say that I give you everything that you said, and that Churchill basically let the Jews run riot in Palestine.
Right. Well, the next question,
because I don't know enough about it. Right.
The next thing about Churchill is his hatred of the white working classes.
Okay.
Always been a great irony that he's used as some kind of champion of the white working classes. Despised them. Wanted striking miners shot. He was a nasty piece of work. You can't hold him up to scrutiny. The other thing which you said is that he was a lone voice against Hitler, which was not true. There were many voices against Hitler at the time. Some good, some bad.
But in Parliament...
Clement Attlee, for example, was very much for war against Hitler.
The way that I was making the point was,
although I despise Clement Attlee, but anyway,
he was a backbencher, is what I was trying to say. Sometimes I don't get my words out right, I'm trying to make the case. I was just trying to explain that he wasn't a member of the cabinet. He was speaking for himself, is what I meant. In Parliament, there may have been others, obviously.
Yeah, there were others. In fact, one of the earliest, and for me, someone who is really on our side, our side of politics, who was anti-Hitler, was the Earl of Portsmouth, the ninth Earl of Portsmouth. He was Viscount Lymington at that time because his father was still alive. But he actually met Hitler back in early 30s when he met him. I've actually got his memoirs here, and I'll find a chapter where he meets Hitler if you want, because it's very interesting. See, he knew from that moment that Hitler was going to go to war, which is why he was one of the first to warn him, to warn everybody about Hitler.
And what year was that, do you know?
I'm just going to find it in the book now. I can't remember. I thought it was 31, but I may be wrong. But anyway, as we're talking, I shall find it, and then and then I shall read it when I found it. But do go on. I mean, do you think that Churchill is someone good to get behind?
Well, look, it comes down to this. Okay, Churchill was a flawed guy. Churchill may be everything that you are saying that he was. But when it comes down to it, the larger argument comes down, like what Brutus was trying to say to everybody, is that the mythos is what it is. And people believe what they believe. And like we had this Natsok guy on, who's effectively, I don't think it's smearing him to say, like he's basically pro-Nazi. Brutus got him to admit, like, there's no rehabilitating Adolf Hitler to the British people. You're never going to do it. So why attempt to do it? Their mythos is that we fought blood, sweat, and tears to defeat the evil enemy of the Germans, and Winston Churchill got us through that, and he is our hero, whether we like it or not. And so why attempt to just trash that down? Because the common man, the vast majority of people, even youngsters still today, just will never grasp that. You can't give them the complicated nuance of it. And so he's our hero, warts and all.
Why bother with it at all is my point. Why bother with it at all? Because as I say, one thing is that it's simply not true. The other thing is no one gives a fuck, frankly. And why bother with Hitler and Churchill and all that nonsense? Do you know what my father said when and my father was 70 now, but he said back when the BNP was flying high, and of course Brutus dismissed the entire BNP as Nazis, which again is completely untrue. So again, he's lied. But my father said, he said all this nonsense about Churchill and Spitfire, pictures of Nick Griffin shaking hands with Churchill as Spitfires fly by and shit like that. Mm-hmm. He said it's antiquated. He said they're living in the past. He says, sure. He says no, people want to know what they're going to do for the future, not living in the past.
I agree.
What other party does that? You listen to the rhetoric of other parties. Nobody wallows in all that shit because it's not relevant.
Okay, David, I agree. But the problem that we encounter on the right wing is that we have people attempting to bring in National Socialism and literal Hitlerism. So on the right wing, as you well know, and you too are opposed to, this fucking idiocy that on the right wing, the nationalist bus always gets driven down into, Hitler did nothing wrong, Nazism, all this symbols and fucking flags from the 1930s. And so in order to combat that, we end up down the road of explaining to people that the greatest story never told is full of shit, that it's just made up by a retard on the internet, that the Europa the Last Battle is a propaganda film that's full of bullshit and lies, that what they think about the 1930s actually, yes, the Nazis were, bad guys, that they were doing aggressive wars. And so we have to try to unravel people on the nationalist side from this retardation of going pro-Hitler, because that is so much worse than just getting behind our own heroes and our own mythos. And so in doing that, we have to explain the story. So that's why I come back to it.
Do you know what I find amusing about the greatest story never told and all that kind of shit? Because it's actually wonderful propaganda for me, because what they try to do on that is they try to go, look, you see, Hitler's more liberal than you thought. Look, he waved at Jesse Owens. Look, he had Muslim Bosniak SS divisions. Look, and so I say, well, what the fuck do I care about Jesse Owens? If he's got SS Muslim Bosniak SS divisions, well, there's something very wrong with him. From a nationalist perspective, he can't be defended. So this is the thing. I use that. I love the greatest story never told, because it's full of shite that I can use against the Hitlerites. Because they love to, look at the greatest story never. Have you never watched the greatest story never told? I have, yes. Let me tell you a few things about that. So,
but it's not just that aspect of it, David. It's the whole aspect of, of which there's always some truth mixed in. Nobody's saying there's no truths there in what these people believe about what was going on in the 1930s. Let's not necessarily name whatever the people. Various groups in the 1930s having undue influence and causing troubles, and and blah 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 blah. And
do you know my favorite thing as well about Hitler, his LGBT division, otherwise known as the Sturmabteilung. And he had absolutely nothing against that. It was really the conservative elements who he wanted to curry favor with, who said, well, you better sort these people out, because we don't want sadomasochistic fags, cigarettes, running around causing trouble and so on. And it wasn't just Rome. Someone's mentioned just Ernst Rome there. It wasn't just Rome. There was a whole bunch of them at the top of the SA.
There's a book written on this. It's called The Pink Swastika.
Yeah.
I mean,
as I say,
does anybody
Hitler had nothing. Hitler had nothing against that. It was, as I say, it was the proper nationalists, the people like Hindenburg, who put their foot down and said, if you want to have my backing, and you had to have Hindenburg's backing, then you have to sort this out, because we can't have these bloody degenerates running round causing trouble, which they were, the sadomasochists, basically. going around, causing trouble with ordinary Germans. And the problem was, of course, that when the Night of the Long Knives happened, Hitler killed off quite a number of right-wingers. And this is why, again, I'm not a Nazi. Because the Nazis killed off quite a good number of proper right-wingers. And sadly, Hindenburg at that time was too busy dying of cancer to come down on Hitler for that. Because he was the one man who could have got rid of him. And he would have done, but as I say, he was on his deathbed, poor guy.
Wasn't he an ailing figure, a bit like Biden, with dementia of some kind as well?
No, not at all. He was absolutely corpus mentis. He was bang on. But as I say, dying of cancer at the end. So sadly, same thing happened with Chamberlain. Although Hitler played Chamberlain for a fool.
For a fool, yeah.
But Chamberlain wasn't. He was actually an honest and decent man, a rare thing in politics. And
the policy of appeasement was
preserve the peace.
Yeah, the British government's policy all the way along was appeasement to a fault. All the way along.
To a fault, you're absolutely right. They should have listened to, as I said, to Viscount Lymington, because Viscount Lymington really had him sussed from his first meeting. That's why he wrote a book called Famine in England in 1938. This is every nationalist, every serious nationalist should read Famine in England, because it's not just a book of its time, it's a book for all time as regards a political doctrine based on agrarianism, really, which is a subject that's come to the fore very recently with the current dispensation that we have in Parliament coming down heavily on farmers. And Viscount Lymington, as I say, he was a gentleman farmer and wrote Famine in England because even at that time, we couldn't really feed ourselves as a country, not properly anyway. And it's only got worse with time. And it's not, he doesn't just talk about the quantity, but also the quality that is produced. And certainly this has been brought to bear with the physical problems. He noted even back then, the problems both mentally and physically of the British, that that they were basically degenerating physically and mentally because of a lack of good nutrition. And he looked actually to Hitler's Germany and said that we should actually be doing what they're doing with regards, their farming infrastructure and so on. Now, that's something that can actually be copied. Not everything that the National Socialist regime did was bad. If it had been, it wouldn't have been successful. But it was, they say, the problem was that it was always going to war. And Viscount Lymington recognised that from the outset.
Yeah. What do you say to somebody like, I guess, Bawana in chat here is going, oh, look, the people who stood up to the global Jewish hegemonic mafia didn't do it nicely, like boo-hoo or whatever. Because this is like the picture that The Greatest Story Never Told attempts to tell us, that, poor Germans were just so oppressed, like, by, the Jews.
This has nothing to do with Jews. What's he talking about? Is he a fucking retard or something? We're not talking about the Jews here.
this is
We're
the
talking
story
about the
that,
war, which is an entirely different subject.
but this
Man's
is
an
the
idiot.
story that, the greatest story never told attempts to pitch to, Natsoks who have to do the mental gymnastics in their mind as to why Hitler ended up invading all these fucking countries, killing millions of Slavs, deporting 2 million Poles to Germany and putting them in work camps, and they have to come up with some reason to excuse it all in their brain because they've been told by 4chan and Europa the Last Battle that the Germans did nothing wrong, and so that they were so badly done to, oppressed, and they had their hands tied at every turn, and they just wanted peace, and it was the war was brought to them. Judea declares war on Germany, and there was nothing that they could do, and everybody except Hitler made them invade Poland.
Well, it's like this. All he had to do was keep out of Poland.
Exactly.
It's so stupid.
So crazy, isn't it? What a timeline. What a different timeline we'd be living in. If he'd have just...
Now, I'll give you a quotation, actually, by Berthold von Stauffenberg, who was a nationalist. His brother's the most famous one, of course, Klaus von Stauffenberg. But his brother Berthold was also involved in the 20th of July plot against Hitler. He was also sentenced to death, of course, just like Klaus. But he said that the racial idea has been grossly betrayed in this war, in that the best German blood is being irrevocably sacrificed, while simultaneously Germany is populated by millions of foreign workers who certainly cannot be described as of high racial quality. That's a very interesting one for the Nazis.
And what time was this? This was pre-war.
No, this, of course, what that quotation?
Yes.
That's during the war.
Right.
Because he talks about the war. He talks about...
Who are these foreign workers, then, that he speaks of?
Oh, do you not know? They brought in foreign workers. I discussed this on my video that I did on the concentration camp in Muldorf, in the Waldkraiburg, which is the forest just outside of Muldorf, where they were building the first jets at the end of the war, and they were bringing in loads of foreign workers.
Where from?
Oh, from mainly from Ukraine, particularly, okay. And the Southern Balkans and so on.
And of course, during the war, I guess, millions of Poles shipped to work camps in Germany, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Non-Jews, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
A lot of people always say that, well, Poland was so Jewish at the time. Can you blame them? And no, we know from the numbers, what happened to the Poles. And I just don't know how anybody defends it. These people, I'm not here to cry a river about, cry me a river about the Poles, but whatever. But 2 million white people basically, just shipped into work camps in Germany. Okay, 1.9 million of them ended up dying. Aside from what happened, whatever you believe happened to Jews.
Yeah, I mean the thing about the camps and everything was that they simply didn't have the means to feed them. They couldn't even feed themselves by the end of the war, so they couldn't feed people in work camps. This is what I say about this idea of the final solution. It's we can't, of course, talk about it in ways that are open and frank, but it's like this: if you want to kill an entire people, you just don't feed them, but yet they still fed them as best they could. Because they had to have fed them, because how else would they have lived through a 6-year-long war? If they really wanted to have killed them, and this is the we were shown a documentary, supposed documentary film, when it first came out in the 1980s at school, called Shoah. It went on to win various awards, of course, because you do if you say the right things about certain periods of history. But my question that the teachers couldn't answer, and that that I got labelled an evil extremist even at an early age for, was why didn't they just not feed them?
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's definitely an interesting question.
It's a question that no one's ever had, a rational answer for. If you want to exterminate people, you don't feed them. You know, it's been done before. It was done with the Holodomor. So it's, and I had the teachers sort of in frenzies and, convulsions that, this was a wrong question. Well, how is a question wrong?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to shirk the topic, but from like everything that I've uncovered looking into the Second World War, and because I was like a 4chan guy, for a little while in 2016, and I was like a greatest story never told guy, and I swallowed it all whole, oh my God, oh my God, everything is wrong that we were taught about history. But then the more you look into it, you realize that all the memes aren't true, that, everything that like the Natsox promote, basically, poor memes, bad versions of stuff, and it's all basically not. There's no facts there that substantiate any of their claims about World War II, and so I now just don't even want to entertain like how the Holocaust happened, basically. Because I just don't know what's true and what's not anymore. What I do know is that we can just look at population numbers. I'm being in very little doubt, that millions of people disappeared, in the Second World War. How this happened, and whatever. I'm kind of happy to just accept the mainstream narratives on it, basically. But we know nobody doubts that genocide of people was going on by the Germans, however they carried it out.
But are you suggesting that they did carry out genocide or not?
Yeah, we know that they did.
Do we?
Yes, we do. Like 2 million Poles died. I consider that a genocide. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about, I think what you have to ask with genocide is, was it deliberate? Was it a deliberate attempt to exterminate a people? And I can't really say that. I can't really say that there was.
Well, I'm going to have to stick with the mainstream narrative and say yes, the Germans.
Well, you'll lose your channel like I did otherwise.
Deliberately exterminate. The Germans had a policy of deliberate extermination of the Jews and of various Slavic groups of people. Well, but I just prefer to step over this particular point because it's where discussion of World War II always ends up getting mired in like.
Well, I'm going to sort of bail you out because I know full well that if you discuss this matter frankly with me, then you're going to get your channel banned. So we'll sort of we'll leave it there.
Yeah, let's step over that. It's like a bit like 9/11 for me, where people always get stuck in how did rather than who did it. They always thought, did they like put bombs in the towers and whatever? And I'm like, let's step over how it happened.
Anyway, I found the quotation, the passage in A Knot of Roots. It's called is the memoirs of the Earl of Portsmouth, So, it is his meeting in 1931. I was right with the year. So through Treviranus, this is another diplomat. He was a diplomat at the time. So this is the context. Yeah. So I was introduced to Goering, whom I say unashamedly I liked and got on with. He was jolly and full of fun and had the sort of ex-airman's attitude to life which I so often found endearing among his British and American counterparts. We met several times, and through him I learned that Hitler, then nearly 18 months from power, was coming to Berlin for a day or two. Through him also I arranged an interview with Hitler at the Kaiserhof, where he would be staying. In the meantime, my intimacy with Brüning and Treviranus, my meetings with Vico von Bülow, and various other politicians seemed to have made me an object of interest to the police, to foreign diplomats, and or the many political parties and sects at large in Berlin at the time. I wrote letters to my friend discreetly describing the course of events, and kept some sort of journal of my day-to-day encounters. I noticed after a day or two in innocence that, when I returned to my room, my papers seemed not quite in order, so I woke up and started to lay things in special order, even including the clothes in my drawers, an order in which I could remember them. When I returned, I knew that they were never as I had left them. It was a harmless operation, and I had nothing to conceal, but I sometimes wondered what my searchers made of it in their cloak and dagger suspicions. If I took a girl out to luncheon, I wondered if she or I would be followed, but I doubt if I had that much importance in their crafty minds. At any rate, I think my meeting with Hitler must have doubled their suspicions. Goering took me down a long corridor in the Kaiserhof. We were talking French, and as we turned a corner of the corridor, he put his hand to his mouth. Please not to talk French any longer. The Führer does not like it. I was taken into a sitting room with a secretary interpreter in it. A moment later, Hitler came in with a tall ADC. Somehow, it was a very impressive entrance. Goering introduced us and left. We sat down round a square table. The impression of power vanished as the brown-shirted Führer sat slumped in a chair almost among three very straight-sitting people. Hitler began a public speech which must have had a great deal of Mein Kampf packed into it, or so it seemed in the interpreter's version. At intervals, I tried to insert what I hoped were intelligent questions. We left his problems in the West and the Treaty of Versailles, and I asked a question about the Polish corridor. By the time the interview had lasted an hour, and even if I was being treated like an audience of 20,000, it had been a fascinating mid-open window on European politics. My Polish corridor question brought a spate of views on Russia and Eastern Europe in general. Here he described almost step by step what actually occurred in Poland in 1939 and later in Russia. The only thing that was left out was the pact with Russia just before the war started. At the end of 10 minutes, I was moved to interject, "But Herr Hitler, surely that means war." The interview ended abruptly at that point. I often wondered, if I had not put so blunt a question, how much more of future plans would have been revealed to me. So there you have it. It was very open. He was very open to people who he thought were on side with Hitler. And certainly, the Earl of Portsmouth was very right-wing. But he was also, someone who did not want war, but knew that Hitler was going to war. And this is why, as I say in his for me, his magnum opus, A Famine in England, he talks about preparing for war to preserve the peace.
Yes.
Because only by sort of arming oneself and meeting threat with threat, you could hope to preserve the peace.
Yeah. Whatever you might think of him, and I know it's not favourable, but in his memoir, which I read now, the first one, Churchill was pointing out in the lead up to the war that like the peace in Europe depended essentially on France being the peace in Europe. It depended upon effectively Germany remaining under the Treaty of Versailles and not being allowed to rearm itself after the war, because if in the event that it did so freely and under no restraint, then it could very quickly summon an army twice the size of France because it had twice the population. And so this was well known. And so this was always the precarious situation in Europe that was foreseen when in 1935 Hitler reintroduced conscription, breaking all the treaties that Germany was bound to under the Treaty of Versailles and whatnot. And it was suddenly within 2 years you can, all your 16 and 17-year-olds are suddenly 18-year-old soldiers, and you're like, fuck, you suddenly have twice the standing army of France.
One of the ridiculous things that all these Nazi sympathizers talk about was that he never wanted war with Britain. Well, there's a certain speech in the Reichstag in 1938 where he starts really sort of goading Britain and everything, and calling us, cowards and so on. And, it's really spoiling for. And then, of course, you have to ask the question, well, who was he going to war with if he's building battleships?
Exactly. There's no ocean to the east.
No, that's right. It was really in... he was trying to rival the British fleet, is what he was doing.
Absolutely.
And I have a book, because I have a number of National Socialist books, actually, in my library. And one of them is called Das Reich. It's not about Germany, though. It's about the British Empire. And it's an analysis of how the British Empire works. Because basically he's looking at what would become his enemy. And sort of breaking it down, how it actually functions and everything, and and its armaments and its and where it's got all its troops and everything. That's a very interesting book, but it shows the mentality of what was happening. The other major book, of course, that was published at that time was Folk ohne Raum, which is a bestseller, and really, that is basically a preparation for war in the East. This idea that the Germans have no living space, that the Eastern Europe is wide open for German expansion and so on. So it was all there.
He told us on the first page of Mein Kampf, Austria must rejoin Germany.
That's neither here nor there. But
his intentions for Lebensraum in the East was set out in 1925. As far back in 1925, he wrote this book. It was public. Everybody could see exactly what he wanted when he came to power.
Well, even before that, I think it's point 3 of the National Socialist points. Is the need for colonies.
Yes.
So, it's right there. I think that was 1919, or was it when they made that? But
wait, it can't have been as far back as that, can it? Because the National Socialists didn't come to power until 1933.
No. But the party was formed in 1919.
And so,
So this was sort of the manifesto. It was was it 21 or 25 points of National Socialism? I can't remember. Anyway, the Anschluss. For me, it's neither here nor there.
Oh yeah, 1920. You're right. I just looked it up.
But there was one big problem with that, and that was the Nazi assassination of Engelbert Dollfuss, who was the Austrian Chancellor, who was very right wing as well.
Yes, he was.
And the Nazis murdered him.
Yep.
So again, this is another right winger who they murdered, and so you have to ask, whose side are they on exactly? Well, they're on their own side, and this is what I've always said. I've never seen them as particularly right wing. They borrow politics from from communism, from
yes,
there are some nationalistic and right wing ideas in there, but there are also ones that come right from the far left, and far left liberal stuff on eugenics as well. And not natural eugenics. We're talking about completely synthetic eugenics. So really sort of bottle laboratory kind of stuff of H.G. Wells and so on. That kind of socialist utopianism, and the kind of eugenics of Aldous Huxley's brother Julian, who's liberal. Are you still there?
Yes, sorry, David. Yes, I'm still listening.
No, I thought.
No, I was just looking something up. I was just looking something up on the AI while you were speaking.
No, it's fine. I just heard things go dead. I thought.
Yeah. No, I've got.
Can anybody hear me?
I've got a little mute button here. So.
No worries. No, it's just. I wondered if I'd been cut off or any other.
No, you're still here.
I've been left floating in space now. Have I got so boring that no one wants to listen to me? Anyway,
we've got an audience, David. You crack on. Don't you worry.
Yeah, we've got an impressive 29 people listening.
My channel isn't what it used to be, but what can I say? Look, it's interesting what you say.
Neither's mine.
By the way, everybody, follow David's new channel, Mjolnir, however you say it, at the movies.
Mjolnir at the movies, but it's not a new channel. It's an old channel. It's the one that we used to do film review. Well, actually, I've started doing film reviews again with this new girl from Australia. So,
okay.
So she and I are back to doing. Well, her voice seems fit enough.
Comment. Okay.
I've never actually seen her in real life. There we go.
To get back on track, it's interesting, this idea, because of course, the Nazis are, nominally right wing, but like you say, derive so much from left wing stuff that, like, it almost makes like Sargon's horseshoe theory correct. They were National Socialists. They were socialists. In every respect of the word, they were. I mean, sorry, I'm losing my voice. Even in 1919, Adolf Hitler's attending a communist funeral. Is it Kurt Eisner wearing a black armband? So this idea that they were just absolute hatred of communism, is wrong. They just didn't. They just wanted their own version of it within their borders. They just didn't want Soviet communism, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It's they pay lip service to kind of folkish ideas and so on, which gives it that sort of nationalistic gloss. But
there was
it's
nothing
really
conservative about National Socialism. Nothing conservative. It was a revolutionary movement.
Well, as I say, the conservatism comes with the sort of folkish ideas, but the problem is that they reduced them to the level of politics. It wasn't an organic flowering, and in fact, they stifled many of the groups that they grew out of. particularly the GGG, the what's it called now? Germanische Glaubensgesellschaft, which was the, I know it's a mouthful, isn't it? But they really sort of trod down. They stopped them using the swastika, because they used it long before the Nazis did, and they stopped them from using it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because of course the swastika base is it is a religious symbol. It is a folkish symbol. It is a pagan symbol. And quite, it appears not just in Europe, of course, it appears right out in the Far East and North Africa and, and all over the place. And it's quite, quite universal in many cultures.
I've got a theory about what the swastika is, David.
Mm-hmm.
So my belief is, I'll just share my screen here. Is that
it's the sun traversing the heavens?
Ah, okay. Yeah. Here we go. That when you look at the Big Dipper in the sky, it goes around the North Star, and so it allows you to understand the seasons based upon where the Big Dipper is in the sky. And
yeah, so that's also one theory. Yeah, that's right.
I think the ancients saw this, and this was like the wheel that they were drawing. The turning of the heavens, turning of the seasons.
Yeah. There's that to it. There is also this idea that it is the sun, sort of turning through the sky from from east to west and so on. But as I say, it is a very ancient symbol, and they stole it and reduced it to the level of politics, which is it's mean-spirited, frankly. It debases something that goes beyond mere politics, and that's something that I'll never forgive Hitler for, frankly. Not just Hitler, but of course the Nazis in general. Because, of course, Hitler didn't really come up with it.
Yeah, so they draped themselves within the trappings of what you call folkish stuff, and the idea of nationalism. Obviously, it was nationalist. It was nationalistic, hyper-nationalistic, but it was also socialist. And everybody forgets the socialist element. I mean, you look at the National Socialist, the 25 points of National Socialism or whatever, and I hate most of it. I'm just going to be honest, everybody. I don't like any of it, to be honest.
But I'll tell you what I don't like particularly is that it was a police state. Yeah.
All this forced group shit. I'm sorry, I don't believe in all this forced group collectivism and everything. And I'm sorry.
You see, I do and I don't. As long as people are not bothering other people within a state, people can talk all they want in pubs and so. I'd give absolute freedom of speech, short of people wanting to plot to murder people and stuff like that, of course, which there were always laws for in any case. But you can have as much freedom of speech as you want. But then again, I'm not a Democrat, and and things wouldn't be democratic in any case. So people at the lowest level wouldn't have political power, and so they could say what they want. But I think that you have to always,
socialists.
You have to protect the nation. That always has to be protected. But beyond that,
those are like the first points of the program.
That's like what freedom.
That's like what everybody can agree with. Germany for Germany. Germany should only be for foreigner. It shouldn't be for foreigners. Everybody has equal rights. Blah 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 blah. But then later on in the program, I forget what it is now. But then later on, it's like the abolition of any income of basically the abolition of incomes that aren't. It gets very communistic. Let me try and pull it up, and we can have a. As I remember, it gets worse as it goes on. Here we go. Here we go. The 25 points of the NSDAP manifesto. We can all understand this bit. We want Germany to be German. We want Germany to be treated the same. We just want land for ourselves. I mean, obviously that's the controversial one, but let's see here. Here we go. The abolition of incomes unearned by work. So many people die. It's wrong for people to make money from the war. Anyone who made money from the war should have all that money taken away. We want all very big corporations to be owned by the government. I mean, come off it here. Big industrial companies should share their profits with the workers. This is starting to sound like the Communist Manifesto to me. Fair enough, pensions can be increased. We want a healthy middle class. We want to split up the big stores and let small traders rent space inside them to make state-town governments try to buy from small traders. We want to change the way land is owned. A law to take over land if the country needs it. Anyway. It's pretty socialist. It's very socialist, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that that people should have a certain basic standard of living if they work. Sure. I don't believe in layabouts and stuff like that. But for people who do an honest day's job, then it should get an honest day's pay, and that should be secured by the state. But and by state, of course. I mean, my views are aristocratic. So you would have aristocrats in a more meritocratic sense, looking after the interests of the of the people lower down. But in any case, whatever system, you have to have sort of an idea of basic fairness that people who are doing an honest day's work and working hard should get a decent standard of living, which is not the case now. I don't believe in hyper capitalism and so on.
No, neither does anybody truly, unless you're one of these hyper capitalists yourself, just out to exploit everybody. Unless you're a fucking billionaire banker who's loving, reaping their profits. But the problem is drawing the line of state interference, where the state starts coming in and saying what's best. And the unwieldy power of the state is usually much worse than just, in my opinion, just letting private enterprise get on with it. And
it's not just that, but neither. I mean, of course, we've got a situation where, and even going back to the Cold War and so on, the two systems were almost like looking each other in the mirror, really. The communism and capitalism, they're very similar when you look at it. It's just that in a capitalist society, it's the big businesses that run the government, whereas it's the other way around in communism. Maybe it tends to be the same people, but. Yeah. The problem is that when the state starts interfering with the family, and that is a major no-no, and you had it writ large under National Socialism. The state basically almost pretty much dissolved the family. The family was there to breed babies for the state, and that was it. And that is, it's no different to communism in that respect.
what you'll hear from the Natsoks is that National Socialism put the family at the heart of Germany, and that, like, it was made, joyous to be, a mother again, and all this kind of stuff. And we see the you'll have seen the newsreels of, like the youngsters doing PE, and then all, giving the Roman salutes, and it all looks wonderful, and, like perfect.
Well, of course it looks perfect. These are propaganda reels.
Yeah, the Hitler Youth. The Hitler Youth with their blonde hair, blue eyes, all young, fit kids, prancing around in a field, and then, being nationalistic to the, to the anthem, and it fills people with, like, teary pride of what could have been.
Well, as I say, the problem with all this is, they look at that and they take it as read. They don't look at it through the lens. If they look at something else, they look at, say, Stalin's propaganda reels and everything. It's propaganda, but then they don't have the same sort of nuance. They turn their brains off as soon as they see something on Nazi Germany, and look at how wonderful it was and everything. There's not a crisp packet in sight on the streets, or probably because somebody in plain clothes would grab them and take them to a cell, but as I say, that's the problem. When the state starts spying on you, you've got problems. I don't care if the guy in charge is the nicest man in the world, if it's Uncle Addy or whatever. It doesn't matter. As soon as the state starts spying on its own populace, you know that there's something wrong. And
yes,
that
absolutely
certainly was the case. It's interesting, the case of Sylvie Scholl, who was one of these people who were executed in Munich, the part of the group that was formed at Munich University called the White Rose. Probably heard of this, yes?
No.
Right. Well, they were leafleting against the government, and they were caught and executed for doing it. So no different to what happened under communist regimes then. But the thing about it was that Sylvie Scholl came from a pro-Nazi family. The father was pro-Nazi, but one of the members of the police took umbrage to him for some reason or other and put him in a cell. And he'd done nothing wrong. But yet, because he was then in the system and everything, he became some sort of enemy of the state. And this is the thing. Now, I used to live in that part of the world. I studied there for a time when I was a lot younger. And so I knew quite a lot of people who'd lived under that regime. And it depended who you talked to whether they approved of it or not. Because everyone had a different experience of it, of course. But the thing that struck me was that it depended on who you were responsible to. The thing is that if the person who was responsible for that particular district or something didn't like you, then you were in the shit.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty much given license to carry out any kind of revenge fantasies and so on. So, if you got on with someone in charge, you were all right. But woe betide you if you didn't.
Sure, and nothing exemplifies this more than what you brought up earlier on, the Night of the Long Knives, where, where even the most high ranking of the high ranking who thought they had done nothing wrong until like the motorcade arrived and they were taken out the back and shot.
Yeah. I mean, there was this famous case in Munich. Again, we're back to Munich. Why not? It's where the beer hall putsch started. But there was the mayor of Munich. Was kicked out under the Nazis, and the guy who was put in was a fervent National Socialist, obviously. But he'd only ever worked as a bellhop, at a hotel. But because he'd obviously been downtrodden for quite some time, and of course gave him license to carry out revenge fantasies against everyone. So that's exactly what he did. So this is the problem that you have.
Very mafia-esque, but state-run, state-operated mafias. Yeah,
it's very much, and this is the problem with all authoritarian regimes.
Yes,
you have to have checks and balances to power. As I say, I'm not a Democrat, but equally, I don't believe in totalitarian regimes either. I believe that there always has to be checks and balances to power.
Yes, and this is where I stand. You see, I'm a realist, and I say effectively, I can't help but admitting I'm a classical liberal at heart. Effectively, I believe, unfortunately, so David, because I believe in I have this yearning for my own freedom, and I'm I just don't want to be interfered with, and that's because I look at myself as I obey the law, and so I understand that not everybody does this, and therefore there has to be certain rules, and there has to be certain restrictions put in place by the state for a good society. So I'm not full classical liberal. I understand the need for order and this kind of thing, but I also understand, from my own point of view, I just want, and due to the tendency, for states to lean heavily into authoritarianism when they don't go, classically liberal.
So you say you're a classical liberal, then? Who are your philosophers that you look to?
Well, I'm not a philosopher, that, David. I mean, I'm just
but classical liberalism is a system of philosophy. So you
well,
sort
I'm talking
of have to...
bare bones. I'm just trying to nail me down bare bones by saying
no, but
I'm
if you
for
see...
my individual liberty not to be infringed upon by anybody, and I understand that case.
But they're also capitalists. Are classical liberals? That's the thing.
Right.
And it's kind of Adam Smith and people like that. So Whigs basically. So you can't really.
No, I can't argue the case.
No,
I can't argue, or it's. I wouldn't even pretend to attempt to.
I would have said that you believe in individual liberty rather than in classical liberalism. But anyway,
right. Well, whatever that is, yeah, pretty much that's my position. And I understand the instinct towards that. As an Englishman. So.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is there's lots of people on the right wing who LARP as loving authoritarianism, but the moment that the boot came down and was put on their own neck, they'd be the first squealing about it. Lots of these people take drugs. They lead promiscuous lifestyles. They lead reckless lifestyles and everything, and they really are effective. They live like libertines, but yet, I have fantasies about authoritarianism. I don't know what fucking planet they're living on.
No, well, I mean, quite a number of them have dodgy sexualities, so they kind of have
exactly
kind of have no essence, if you see what I mean. And they're in that sort of, they live in a permanent state of hysteria, really. That's why they are how they are. I think that that homosexuality certainly leads to that, and you can see that on the alt-right. Did you see the thing about what's he called now? This Groiper guy or whatever he
Nick Fuentes.
Yes. Apparently being caught getting blown off by another man or something.
I think it's fake news.
Yes,
my position on
Miami
it.
Virtue there. Good on him helping us out there. Destiny and Fuentes, yes.
My position on the Destiny and Fuentes video is that that's fake. I mean, it's real. That's Destiny. I don't think that video is of Nick Fuentes, but however, I would be less convinced that the act hasn't happened. I just don't think that's the video of it.
Perhaps, but perhaps I haven't seen the video, so I can't comment, and I
haven't scrutinized it either. I saw it going around on Telegram. That's as much as I saw.
There's something lesbianic about hardcore racism. What the fuck is that? Oh no. I think he's a bit strange, that one, isn't he? I don't know what he's talking about, frankly. I don't think he does either.
Do you understand what I'm saying? There are lots of people on the right wing with like this who preach authoritarianism but lead lives of debauchery themselves. I mean, how do we marry this together to make it make sense to me, David?
I can't make it make sense to you because it doesn't.
Right. No.
Yeah, I'm very old school. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a family man. I like a beer. Sometimes I have too many beers. I'm not going to fucking apologize for it. It's I used to play rugby, and on Saturday nights we got hammered occasionally. That was life, and
I can accept all that, though. All that, none of that stepped outside of law or even English tradition.
Exactly, okay. It's a very British way of being, and sometimes we're involved in fights and so on. But that's life, It's part and it's the rough and tumble of life. I don't care for a sanitized version of life where the state takes control and slaps you on the hand for every little misdemeanor or something. If things get out of hand or something, then obviously nobody wants kind of bullies in the pubs and so on. But sometimes fights break out and things like that, and that's life. But my view of life, what would my utopia be? What would my idyll be? Probably if you read Tolkien, The Shire. If you read James Herriot.
I've read The Fellowship of the Ring. Tom Bombadil. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah, he's a merry old fellow, isn't he?
Merry old fellow. He wasn't in the film.
His hat is blue and his boots are yellow, or something like that. No, it wasn't.
The best part of the book was cut out of the film. Interestingly, it was about 80 pages. All the Frodo's adventures, hanging out with Tom Bombadil in this cabin in the wood, and all that. Like the main part for me, the biggest chunk of the book or something, like 100 pages or something of this, and it wasn't in the movie.
You're trying to build up a point of contention here, aren't you? You're trying to bait me in some way.
No. It was a complete tangent. It meant nothing.
But you won't, because I like Tom Bombadil. So there we go.
Okay.
but yeah, as I say, my view of the England that should be is something along the lines of James Herriot's North Yorkshire
Right.
of that time. Not with regards to technology, because technology always moves on, but the way of being, if you see what I mean. The
Right.
idea that life should be based on villages and on people knowing each other at a personal level, on having a shared identity and therefore a shared vision of the future and a
And
shared
what about
identity that
this?
comes from the past.
Sure. And what about the cities, though? Because we're always going to have the cities. Do you just accept like the cities are just going to be hell, or
No,
what?
no,
Okay.
but I think that they should be depopulated. I think that they should. I think the city should have no more than 100,000 people living in it.
Well,
And
how are we
even
going to do
then,
that?
it should be sort of put into districts.
Right.
Of course, England, would be less populous than it is now because, of course, not everybody in England is English. So you wouldn't need such big cities in any case. But certainly, there has to, I mean, one of the policies that I would certainly do if a nationalist party ever came to power, we would reforest basically the greenwood that used to exist from Leicester up to Barnsley. What is in part Sherwood Forest and beyond. I think that you need that forest back. See, it basically ripped the lungs out of England and the heart out of England as well. A lot of our legends, of course, come from that part of the country, Robin Hood and all that. But as I say, people talk about the environment. I'm an environmentalist because I'm both a pagan and a nationalist. So I'm also an environmentalist by default.
Yeah, me
And,
too. I think. Me too. I think. Actually, yeah. I mean, it's a shame, isn't it, that environmentalism got wrapped up in climate quackery and left-wing nonsense.
yeah, that's right. It's very
It's
uh,
kind of
um,
wild how that happened because it used to be considered, didn't it, like a kind of like a. There used to be like called eco-fascism, isn't it? Didn't it? These people who were like, very staunchly environmentalist.
well, the environmentalists, strangely, they came from the extreme left and the extreme right because they were sort of fringe groups in many ways. But the extreme left has always had weird ideas about nature. The extreme right, no, I mean, going back to National Socialism, as regards looking after the environment and stuff like that, and looking after farming, they were pretty spot on. They were pretty spot on, but that doesn't excuse the other nonsense that they did. But as I say, with regard to that they were fine. And as I say, Famine in England is a great read for all that. It comes from the Organic Society as well, does the Earl of Portsmouth. So we have to get back to an organic way of living, not just in terms of growing our produce, but in creating an organic society. And the more we move towards artificial ways of sustaining ourselves, the more we will decline, both physically and mentally, I think. Most people these days, they grow up on fast food, and it's called
I think
junk
the
food for a reason.
I think the horse has bolted on this issue, David. I do mean I just think we're in the world of factory farming, mass industrial agriculture. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. We've got way too many mouths to feed.
Oh, that's what the left always say. The left always say that it's too late. It's too late.
I want to be able to buy my 24 meatballs for £7 in the supermarket, David. I don't want them. I don't want to pay £15 for.
But that's not realistic.
Meatballs.
But that's not realistic. And as I say, your health will suffer for that over time. How many cancers are you going to get later in life? Now, I grew up on basically an organic diet, as a lot of Gen Xers did. You know, we didn't call, we didn't have a special name for organic food. It was just called food when I was a kid.
Sure.
Strangely, most of the vegetables came from my grandfather, who had a small holding, and so all that was organic. The meat came from my local butcher, who got it from the local farmer, and so on. And the fish came to the local fish market from the coast. So, you know, this is how things were growing up in the late 70s and 80s. And to say that we can't go back to that, I think is nonsense. There has to be a will to do it, of course. But a lot of people are coming back to this idea that this is important. You look at the people who are supporting the farmers now, and a lot of it is sort of small farms, organic farms, and so on. There's a trend towards that, if you look, towards creating organic farms and having farmers' shops. And you have to have good food to build strong and healthy bodies and minds.
What if I say to you?
If you look now, if you look now, the soy boy is a phenomenon. There were no soy boys when I was 20 years old. It is a phenomenon now.
And you think that is a product of like what chemicals in the food? Wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you? You think it's that radical? Wow.
Absolutely. Well, what would your explanation be otherwise? Because it is a phenomenon.
It is a phenomenon. I think some of it is cultural, and so people make themselves into these things.
How do you change your physiognomy like that?
I actually think how you behave, you can grow into a certain physiognomy in a way. You know, how you cut your hair, how you behave. You start wearing glasses and grow a fucking soy beard, and there is that look. I get it. There's that look.
No, but it's as I say, it's not just that though. The entire shape.
There
of
are real
face.
markers. There are real markers. Absolutely, there's real markers of this, and there's real markers that we can look at. Like, just if we had to pick one that is very substantiated, it's sperm counts in men. So we know that, and testosterone levels in men. So these are known. These are like on record. We can say that the testosterone levels of men have reduced over the decades. Every decade, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm of a certain age, but I'm still fathering children.
Well, congratulations, David. Let's go.
Well, I'm for race and nation. There we are.
Exactly. Let's go.
So, I'm still adding to my brood. And so,
I've not started yet. So.
I mean, to mention another sort of alt-right figure, Varg Vikernes, or Christian as his real name is.
Ironically.
Yes, ironically. He, we may say a lot about what he proposes and stuff like that, but he's still fathering children because he's roughly the same age as I am,
Right.
and so something has happened from our generation to the one that's around 20 years old now.
And you think this is down to food? Well, it's an interesting argument. It's the more intellectual version of what Alex Jones has been saying for 20 years, that they're turning the fucking frogs gay, in the water.
Well, I mean, Alex Jones, he says a lot of things that are true, and then puts a sort of 20% bullshit silliness on it. I think he does it deliberately.
He does.
I think that's what he's there. I think that's what he's there to do. Like David Icke, he's the American David Icke almost, really, and he's there to turn genuine conspiracies into bullshit conspiracy theories. That's his.
Yes. The reason there's a meme, Alex Jones is right, is because he throws so much shit at the wall that, occasionally something sticks. That's why. He literally says everything is true. He even once claimed, he did a show, that there is like secret sex slave cults, sex trafficking to the planet Mars. No bullshit. So,
yeah,
so literally, if you say everything, if you come out with every
this is what we sort of started off with. Yeah, this is what we sort of started off with Brutus. He says any old bullshit to get likes and subscribes.
Oh,
and so
come on! I don't believe that about Brutus. I don't believe it.
Well, I mean, I'm being generous to him here.
I think Brutus's heart is in the right place. I think he wants, he definitely.
I'm not
wants
sure. I'm not sure.
this for the. Well, it could be a long con. It could be. Do you think I'm being set up? Oh, for like.
No, I don't necessarily say that you're being set up. As a great French detective once said, "I suspect everyone and no one."
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Brutus has a long history on the internet. He was doing way back in like 2016 or 2015 a show called SS Britannia, and I actually know that I listened to it way back then, which is really weird. I mean, I told him about this. I said, I think I listened to a show with you on like fucking 8 years ago. And it used to be put out by Andrew Anglin on the Daily Stormer, and yes, it's that show with that's Sven Longshanks, who ended up going to jail.
Yeah, well, this is what I said. He's had more positions than a Vietnamese prostitute.
But I mean, positions evolve over time. I mean, David, my position has evolved too.
Yes,
I was a 4chan idiot.
The positions evolve. That's true, but there's a difference between evolution and revolution. From going from one extreme to another extreme to another. And he's now screaming Nazi at anybody who doesn't worship Churchill. It's just foolishness and nonsense, and that's being generous. Because if I didn't see it as foolishness and nonsense, then I would start getting suspicious.
Right. So to defend him again, I think, look, and I'm also now culpable too. So anything, because I'm doing the show with him. So what we say when we're talking about people who are neo-Nazis, it's not to defame them from like as a left winger would use. Oh, you're a Nazi. It's not that at all. It's people who are sympathetic with the Third Reich in World War II. It's that simple. And it's just because that is the Nazi Party. So we're just talking about the people, and it's prevalent on the dissident rights everywhere. They are Brutus talks about it. Just a minute. Brutus talks about it as in there's this giant stinking turd that the distant right like try to sweep it under the rug, but it stinks, and it's then you find out about it if you like go to any of their meetings or you talk to them in private or they let it slip here and there. They're all, and like some of them are out in the open about it. Mark Collett, for instance.
Yeah, but he was one of those steaming turds. And just because the
so
steaming turd is...
So was I.
Well, what were you a raging Nazi at one time?
Well, I wasn't on the internet, but I fell for all the memes back in like 2016 on 4chan. I fell for it all. I watched The Greatest Story Never Told and went, wow, we were lied to.
Well, as I say, there's some truth in The Greatest Story Never Told, but
yeah,
it doesn't, to me, make Hitler look any better. But yeah, one thing that, again, I took umbrage at was the fact that he labelled the entire BNP a bunch of Nazis and that they deserve to fail and they deserve to be destroyed. Now, that is sheer fucking idiocy, because the BNP was a really, a force, not just to, to protect the rights and the political interest of the indigenous people of Britain, but it also stopped leftward drift of the other parties, and that has to be addressed as well. Why do parties keep drifting leftwards? And the answer is quite simply that there is nobody on the extreme right, as it's called in media parlance. It's not really extreme at all, but there's nobody there of any success to stop the other parties from drifting leftwards. And this is what's happened for a long, long time. And when the BNP was successful, the other parties, particularly the Conservative Party, had to take into consideration the fact that the BNP was successful and couldn't be as radically leftist as they would have liked, particularly under Cameron and so on. But he is foolish in two ways. One, to say that they deserve to be destroyed. Why would you say such a thing if you were after protecting the interests of the native British? Why would you say such a thing? That's something that has to be asked of him, because that is something a radical leftist would say. The other thing is to castigate everyone in that party as a Nazi, which is complete bollocks. I met some awfully nice people in there who were absolutely uninterested. They weren't just, they didn't like Nazis. They were not interested in it. Didn't mean anything to them. Some of whom are still my friends. And for him to say that. Now, don't get me wrong. There were one or two high-profile Nazis in there, yes.
They had a Nazi problem. Let's be honest, didn't they?
It was a problem in that, as I say, I think some of them were working for Hope Not Hate. I'll be honest.
The idea that, look, I get your point, but like Brutus is, he's not. It's not like there's no smoke without fire. Like look at Mark Collett doing Young Nazi and Proud, and
Well, Collett and Collett, I've always said is probably working for Hope Not Hate, because there are so many dodgy
there was
things.
A culture within it, a culture there. Certainly, like around Mark Collett, he wasn't just like if he was expressing these views like just to like the first cameraman that showed up. He was the and this is the thing, he was always the go-to poster boy of the British media every time they wanted to demonize
the British National Party or the so-called far right in Britain. And he was absolutely willing, there and able anytime they called upon him to do what they wanted. And that, to me, speaks volumes about Mark Collett. He, as I say, there were lots of people in the British National Party who asked why he hadn't been thrown out of the party, particularly when he had dalliances with underage girls in hotel rooms.
Yeah, in Blackpool, wasn't it? 14-year-olds in a hotel room.
Yeah, in Blackpool, and there was another time as well. I can't remember if it was in
Allegedly.
Leeds or in Sunderland, but there was a very specific instance that was caught on video. Used to be on YouTube with him and Dave Hannum, and they'd squirreled away these two young girls away into that hotel room. It was on camera, so. And at that point, there was a lot of calls for him to be dismissed, and he was not. And as I said, then he's always there, showing up to be, a Nazi, a cartoon Nazi, whenever the media wanted to. It was the same when there was the Brexit vote. You noticed that? Suddenly turned up with that girlfriend with a giraffe swastika tattoo, with a big swastika tattoo there, grinning away there. Look, you see, all these people are for Brexit, these evil Nazis, He's always there on hand, isn't he? So there's something very, very, very dodgy about Mark Collett. And as I say, people should stay away from anything that he's involved with.
Well, you end up in the nick anyway if you do.
Well, there's another thing, yeah. There's another thing. Why does everybody go to prison? But Mark Collett never does he?
Even Laura Towler's husband's in jail.
Is he?
Yeah. Sam Towler, whatever his name is, Sam. He's still in jail. She's looking after the two kids, or however many they've got.
What's in jail? This is news to me, and I don't know who she's married to.
Sam Patriotical Alternative.
Oh, Sam Mellier. Someone's put there.
Sam Mellier.
Miami Virtues put Sam Mellier.
He was prosecuted because he ran the group 100 Handers. 100 Handers was a group who started out printing out stickers, and they made it so that you could download their stickers and go about fly posting them yourselves. And I looked at some of these stickers, and some of them they weren't smart about it. Some of them were, you can understand why they fell foul of the law.
Well, you have to be smart about a plan of attacking the establishment. That's a fact. Now, I said in that little chat, on Brutus's channel, when I was commenting, that I did actually have a plan to attack the establishment intelligently.
Oh yeah, what is your plan?
I've had it for years. Well, I've had it for years, but it's trying to get people on board and doing stuff, and that's the major hurdle, because you have a lot of people who don't want to do stuff. They're all right, shouting and screaming on the internet, but as soon as you try to recruit them for a project or something, they go, "Oh, not me." This is the major problem. Now,
yes,
I put my money and my time where my mouth is. I created Mjolnir magazine, the print magazine, as it was, the magazine for the arts, which is why I gained a certain amount of notoriety at one time. But which I enjoyed. I'll be honest, it was great. But as I say, I went about it in an intelligent way, and you have to be intelligent.
Yes.
The major problem that we face, and it's the problem that we have to deal with before any other problems, is we have no media presence. We do not have our own media. Until we have our own media, everything else is moot and void. Because it's like this: you can have all the protests you want, and you know, I've been on protests and so on, but that doesn't matter because the media will portray you as the worst kind of people. And so when you get, you know, if and when you get locked up or whatever, no one will bat an eyelid because you're the evil bastards that the media has told them that you are.
Yeah.
And so you have to create a media first. Now, there's been a lot of money passed through the hands of people in the British National Party, for example, at the top of the you know, there were literally millions of pounds passed through the British National Party, and at the end of the day, there was nothing to show for it.
Yes.
And it's the same with the talking heads. They all collect donations, but what do they do with the donations? They spend it on themselves.
They do hiking and stand on a hill with a banner.
Yeah, but that costs nothing. So where does the money go? You have to create things with the money.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I created something, and Miami Virtue there, bless him, says I have copies on Mjolnir base.
Got one. Wow. He's got
Kudos
one.
to you. There you go. So you know, I created something.
Yep.
I made
what
a
you
lot
don't
of
know, Miami, is that there is an RFID chip inside the pages, and he's got your address now.
Well, the fact is that I had the addresses of many people. You know, because I.
Fuck yeah! I thought, he's definitely got your. He's definitely got it. Definitely got your address now.
But no one else ever has. You will find that nobody has ever had a visitation from the police or whatever. And as I say, this is behind me now. It was it's 8 years ago since the last edition. So, people
shit,
can
so
see
he's an
that.
OG. He's
Yeah,
an OG.
yeah.
He got it addressed. He got it sent to Mark.
Fine.
He got it sent to Mark's address. He got it drop shipped. Good on you.
Yeah. But yeah. As I say, one thing that I tried to get going was an online newspaper, and not stupid articles or anything like that, but just printing the news. But just like the left-wing media does, where you have an ideology at the back of that.
Yes.
You have an ideology at the back of the newspaper. You're not overt with it. But every sort of article has this at the back of its, at the back of its thinking. If you
have
like.
A cultural lens.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, viewed through a certain lens. Yeah, I get it. So surely isn't the time now though, David, more than any time before? I mean,
Well, you might be better than me at getting people to do stuff.
I'm not, unfortunately. I can't get people.
The main problem is, and as I say, I ended up running Mjolnir magazine because it was something that I could do pretty much alone. Although it did cost me my health quite a bit in the end, because it's quite an endeavor.
Yes.
To do something of that magnitude on your own. Now, don't get me wrong. There were other people who I'm very grateful to, Nick Walsh and Bill Beckett and so on. But largely, it was my endeavor, and there was a lot of running around, and it's not just I was advertising it, appearing at places like the London Forum and so on, so you could sell it and be part of that network, even though I didn't agree with some of the stuff that they were doing, but you sort of need that network to, to actually get the thing out into the public. But I met some good people, some interesting people along the way. People like the artist Charles Kraft, who was a friend of mine, sadly passed away the other year. But yeah, it was an exciting time as well.
So good on
you. You have to realize that there's a certain amount of kudos that you get from it.
There is. Being a content creator is good. It's a good feeling. People give you respect. There's something good about it. You feel like you're doing something.
Yeah,
I was saying this the other day to somebody. I openly admit, that I like doing something like for the accolades. I'm happy to admit that that there's a good feeling to doing some of it, and just like being even on a micro level, just like I've got a few people that know
can
me.
I just stop you? Can you hold the fort for a few minutes? I'm just off to the toilet.
All right, okay. Have one.
I am getting quite old now.
So where was I? Look, what David is saying is right. That if you do something, if you produce something, people get to know you. Like there's, I don't know, whatever, 30 of you here. It's like a freaking most micro stream ever. But in a crazy way, if one of the other people on the internet in our little sphere start doing a stream, and I appear in their chat, one or two people will be like, "Oh, it's SJJ. Hey, SJJ," and in a weird way, I'll think, "Oh, that's kind of cool." So, yeah. But what I was about to say to David, in case he's still with his headphones on whilst he's draining the snake, is that surely now is the time, if ever before, there was the opportunity to effectively produce this media to do our content that we want. The alt-right tried it the first time, really. The alt-right was the first attempt at online activism to create a true, organic, whether you think it was organic or not, political movement on the internet and create some like culture creation on the internet. It failed. We ended up with the big censorship war and the big shutting, the great shutting of 2018 and 2019. But now, with Elon Musk opening up X and giving us our platform, and everybody agrees like that the censorship is much less than it used to be during the great shutting of 2018, 2019. So it's much easier now, even as you still got to toe the line, not to lose channels and things, but it's easier now. So if ever there was a time to create your media, it's now. The shackles are much, they're off more than they have been recently. Are you back, David?
I am, yes. I worry about Elon Musk, to be honest. He nicked 50 odd of my followers of late, and I'm wondering if the honeymoon period is over now that Trump has been elected. Especially as the other day he wrote on his X page that we should speed up legal immigration. Did you see that?
Sure. At the heart of Elon Musk, I mean, he's not a white nationalist. I mean, I hate to break it to anybody.
I know that. No, I know that.
So what he is, at the heart of it, he's just a meritocrat. That's like where his views go. And the woke turned his kid into a transgender. So there's that.
Well, he believes that some people are transgender, didn't you him talking about that on Joe Rogan?
I doubt. I think if he does, it's like that 0.001% who are born with both bits or something. It'll be some.
Well, that's
like
no,
that.
that's different. That's intersex. That's a genuine biological reason for that, but transsexuality is different from intersexuality. Transsexuality is a species of insanity that says that, well, basically, I think that I'm a woman, therefore I am, or I think that I'm a man, therefore I am. It's like my uncle's brother-in-law. He had various phases. He's quite insane. Gets taken to the mental asylum every so often, but he's had periods of thinking he was Hitler, going back to Hitler. Also Napoleon and Mike Tyson, although he lost more fights than Mike Tyson.
Wow.
But anyway, you know, by the same token, if a man thinks he's a woman or a woman thinks he's a man, why can't he think he's Napoleon? Does he not become Napoleon? You know, it's nonsense. It's a species of absolute madness.
Yeah, we've been done the trans thing. Really, we've been done over by language. We allowed them to use these terms of woman and man instead of male and female, and we got screwed over by it because none of the even today, as far as the trans stuff has gone, none of the even the woke people will admit, oh no, they're not female. Female is a category of chromosomes. So what they're all talking about is what used to be known as transvestite. It's men who put on all the trappings of being a woman, either for sexual pleasure or because they're gay and want to act like a woman. So, but these people, like all the trappings of what a weird gay man thinks a woman is. now we've ended up, in where society accepts. Okay, then we'll call that woman.
Yeah,
it's extremely misogynistic, isn't it? Actually, it's extremely misogynistic that what we will accept to be called a woman are like a gay man's weird or a pervert's weird fantasies of what all the trappings of a woman are.
Well, it tends to be ridiculously conflated, doesn't it? It's
big boobs and fucking lipstick, and this is like the version of
it's like a caricature.
Yeah, a caricature of a woman.
But what's interesting is that the reverse, the women who have become men, don't get as much pushback. Have you noticed that? So, for example, Ellen Page, Elliot as she calls herself now, doesn't get the same amount of pushback. And that's basically because of the feminist lobby, the power of the feminist lobby, who only attacks the male to female transsexuals. You notice that? And if you notice as well, they are bringing in radical feminists into the conservative right. Cooker Tarlson is one for this, so he's bringing in radical feminists like that. What's she called now? Posey, what's her face? I can't remember.
Posey Parker.
That's it, Posey Parker, yes. Now, I remember when she was a radical feminist bringing up her two sons gender neutral back in the 2010s. Yes, you see, I have a long memory, and I remember, her. There's still an article on the internet. All the rest have been erased, but there's one in the Times that still remains where she talks about it.
Right.
Well, it's people like that who caused the problem in the first fucking place.
And this Posey Parker is now a TERF, is she?
Yeah, she's now a TERF, and she's being included in what passes for the basket case right in America. In other words, the trumpets, people like Tucker Carlson who brought her on his show and so on, and we tracked this woman down because she was shouting at the swimming pool, saying get that man out of the pool and so on. We tracked her down. Didn't have to track her down because she's, as I say, she's been brought on all these shows in Britain and everything. She's become a personality that's been artificially propped up straight from the off by the fake, by the establishment who's created this fake opposition.
Well, I can absolutely agree that I too can't stand the
Yes,
Tucker
Mr.
Carlson.
Ewing's really Kelly J. Keane. Yeah, that's it. Kelly Jane Keane Minshall, isn't it? She's not. She's not radical. She's too radical for just one double barrel. She's got to have two double barrels. Kelly J. Keane Minshall.
Well, I don't know anything about who you're talking about, but what I can say is I hate the Tucker Carlson right wing in America. What it's morphed into, this fucking, it's like a caricature of the right. But I recognize that maybe that's just like an American expression of something. I mean, Richard Spencer was actually funnily talking about this the other day. That it's like it's a perversion of the right, and it's like rehashing like old alt-right talking points from 2016 with like a big heap of shit dumped in on top.
Well, Miami.
So like, just a minute. One example that he gave was like, we need to. The Great Replacement. So now, like, Tucker Carlson has popularized basically the Great Replacement, but now it's not. It's nothing to do with race or ethnicity. It's that they're bringing in. The Dems are bringing in their voters. This is how it's been. Did you get what I'm saying? So like they accept the Great Replacement. They talk about the Great Replacement is happening, but it's got nothing to do with race or ethnicity. They say that the Democrats are bringing their voters in, and so this is like where they promote an old like alt-right talking point, but it's like got this. It's been shittified and repackaged for the masses.
Well, I made a meme the other day, which was the variation on the Indiana Jones meme, where he's swapping the treasure with the stone before he sets the boulder off. And, that they're basically swapping ethno-nationalism for Christian fundamentalism, which is exactly what's happening.
Interesting, yeah.
But Miami Virtue has made a good point, which I've said before. He says that anti-woke is a smart way to enforce 90s leftism as the formal reality of Western social life, which is absolutely true. What basically, and this is how the left. I've talked about leftward drift during this conversation, and this is how leftward drift happens, in that what passes for the right is the old leftist position, and it makes the old leftist position seem normal somehow.
Yeah, so this is the case that the conservatives are always fighting they're always fighting the battle of 10 years ago, basically, aren't they? They're always fighting now just to put back in what was like 5 or 10 years ago. And that's the extent of it. And so there's forever leftward creep.
Yeah, that's where you got. But as I say, to combat all this, you have to have a media that pushes back. Before you even get to politics, you have to have media and you have to have culture. And so
Well,
as
David,
I,
we've got
as I didn't,
millennial coming up, haven't we? Sorry, David, did something happen? I think your microphone, but
who we
then.
getting on this year? Blair White. Right. Enough of that nonsense.
David, we always get people, stalwarts like Greg Johnson.
LGBT, right?
Who else do we get? We'll get the academic agent, maybe, if we're lucky.
I've never listened to academic agent. Isn't he a non-white?
No, he's British, David. His mother was Welsh, and his dad was Iranian, which means Aryan.
Right. So we're ignoring Arab colonization of Persia. Anyway. Yes, Greg Sausage Roll. Quite right, Buana.
Hey, just on that topic, it never dawned on me. Just a minute, it never dawned on me until something like 4 years later that Greg Johnson had named himself after a penis.
You didn't get that?
No, I never got it. Never got it. It totally went over my head.
Yeah, it dawned on me some time after I met him, when he started sort of pushing things further and further, and I took it as read initially because I was a bit naive when I started hanging about with the alt-right crowd.
Yeah.
And I took people more at face value than I should have, which is why I turned against them so vehemently, because I don't like being taken for a ride. As I say, Johnson. And I don't mean that literally, by the way. I can hear the little squeals of laughter in the background there.
Yeah. Everybody's shocked. Nobody else realized this. That he'd literally named himself Johnson.
You see, I don't even know if that's his real name or not. Johnson, but yeah,
it's got to be a nom de plume, hasn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing that really sort of, did it for me, where I was incensed because, as I say, I feature in some of his literature, in the books that he released and everything, and then he puts out My Nationalist Pony.
Yes.
Which is basically nationalism for bronies.
Yeah.
So supposedly.
Hey, everybody's saying it is.
And a lot of people went, "Is this a joke?" And he went, "No joke."
Yeah. Well, what about the argument that this is like how we connect to the Zoomers or something, David? That we have to do, we have to insert wrong idiom. We have to, get ourselves into wherever the Zoomers are, whatever their humor is, whatever it is. Maybe we just have to I don't know. I can't even argue for it.
That's saying that all Zoomers are like that, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't argue for it.
So he's catering for what 0.00001% of the population. Because how many of the population are homosexual bronies?
Yeah. Well, I haven't read it. I'm just thinking maybe it wasn't aimed at homosexual bronies, but maybe it might just be a weird thing that appealed to, like, I don't know, weird people who are into weird culture. Who knows? Hey, I'm more interested that people say that it actually is Greg Johnson's real name, and if so, this actually goes into my theory that names have like some magical spell and people live up to their names. So if it is his real name, I'm even more intrigued because he ended up living up to it, didn't he? He literally lived his life around his penis.
Oh yeah, and you know him and the guy who wrote My Nationalist Pony, Buttercup Dew or Bane DeWitt, as his various
Well,
names.
those are nom de plumes, aren't they?
But they were fuck buddies.
Right, oh god.
Yeah, there is a 20-year disparity between them.
Well, in Greg's defense, what I always say is that at least when I've seen him doing interviews, he's never ever brought it up, and I've never known him attempt to insert any kind of innuendo, or I felt like I've been quietly being groomed or something, or like homosexuality is being like demystified or destigmatized through anything that he's been saying. But I accept your point that in terms of what he's been publishing, there is an argument to say that that agenda has been there on the side, isn't it?
Well, as I say, it was personally embarrassing to me because,
Right, yes.
you know, I'd written articles for Countercurrents, and some of them had been published in their books and so on. So, you know, this really sort of angered me because I don't want to be associated with that kind of bullshit. Why,
No, and
you know, would you want,
understand
you
that.
know, would you want to be associated with something like that? So this is why I. It's the same as I say with other people who were involved in all kinds of nonsense. I supported initially National Action until I realised what they were up to.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You dodged a bullet there, David.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I didn't just dodge the bullet. I told other members to dodge the bullet as well when I realised what was happening.
Yeah.
This got me a death threat, which was quite amusing. Don't think they really know who I am, but anyway. The chap in question got 8 years in prison anyway for his silliness. Nothing to do with me. I don't report people to the police. That was for things that he'd done very stupidly.
Oh, the actual person who made... You knew who made the death threat?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. So
it's one of the leaders of National Action.
Okay. I thought you were
very stupid.
I thought you were just talking about like internet death threats, because I was going to say, oh, you know, join the club. Or,
yeah, it was an internet death threat, but
you knew who did it, and he went to jail.
I just sent him a message back saying, "Don't be so stupid," you know. And I told him that I was attending a specific conference at a specific time, so that you know, if he felt like trying it, then he'd better come and sort it out. And that was that.
Yeah, everybody likes to be tough on the internet.
Yeah, it's. I think that people's egos got the better of them, and they started thinking that they were some kind of. Well, they modelled themselves on the Sturmabteilung, and some of the members turned out to be perverts. So they had quite a bit in common, except that they weren't nearly as effective.
What about the idea that, like, people say that nationalist politics, disaffected move. It's a disaffected movement, and it attracts disaffected people, and so the people have described it as a shit magnet, and so you inevitably end up. I mean, even what's his face, who was head of the alliance, William Pierce, back in the day, did that famous clip, didn't he, where he said, he talked about another group, and he said, I'm sick of people who do 1488 and Roman salutes to TV cameras, and I'm actually glad that there's this other group to suck up, the shit, basically, the people that we don't want to be associated with. So there's always that element of people who are going to be attracted to our side of politics, isn't there?
Well, I mean, I think to an extent that national action thing was a honey trap for white working class lads, because it was there to attract very impressionable sort of teens. I'm ashamed that I advertised them. Unfortunately, as I say, I didn't know quite what they were up to at the time. But
he was actually a member, Sam Melia.
Yeah,
you know that. Yeah, Sam Melia was in there.
Right. And as soon as I realized, I printed an article to say that people should get out while they can.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, it had all the obvious trappings of a honey trap, where the disaffected youth are basically bundled into an avenue where they're encouraged to be extremists, to be the enemy the state wants to see, and then they can lock them up and ruin their lives. And the state says, oh, look, we've locked away some evil, nasty people. And everyone says, oh, yes, so you have. And it was just an awful situation for everyone who was involved in that. A friend of mine was actually involved. He went on a rally, a national action rally. He went on, and apparently Benjamin Raymond said to remove their masks during the rally when they got near the police. And my friend said, fuck this, I'm off. This a friend of mine is pretty smart and could see what the writing was on the wall, and what was happening. So, and then he changed his phone number and everything, to make sure that they couldn't contact him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm lucky. I've never been involved in anything like this. I've never been attracted to any real world action or anything like that. And I suppose, you could therefore castigate me and say, well, you're not doing anything then either. Or you're part of the problem, Maybe, David, I am in that 99.9% that you talked about at the start of the show, of people who you can't get to actually fucking do anything. You can't get them to turn out in real life. You can't get them to turn up. But
you could actually do something on the internet. As I say, an online newspaper is a realistic goal. Then, of course, after that, you want to be looking at a radio station. Pirate radio was pretty big at one time. And doesn't cost an awful lot to set up. I think it's about $8,000 or something like that. For a radio.
If you're don't you fall under Ofcom if you're broadcasting?
Well, we're talking about pirate radio, so you need a frequency jammer and so on.
Oh.
But as I say, it was big in the 70s and 80s and so on. Even on the Lenny Henry show, the Lenny Henry show was all about pirate radio, about this black, what was it, the Brixton Broadcasting Corporation or something. And this Delbert Wilkins, was a pirate radio broadcaster, broadcasting a black radio station. Well, if some cretin like Lenny Henry can think about that, why can't we? As I say, it would be technically illegal, but it would only be illegal in the same kind of way as the other pirate radio stations have been illegal. So I'm not saying that we should do illegal stuff. I'm just saying that, there's a possibility of, of being a bit creative about how we should distribute information.
We don't need to do radio now because we have the internet. And so, like, in all seriousness, I mean,
the thing about a radio station like that is that you can tune into it while you're driving and stuff like that. People like a bit of music. Okay. I'm talking about playing music and stuff like that. A lot of classical music you can get for free. And then, of course, there's the music that we have on the right anyway. There's. I mean, of course, then you're getting into Hitlerism a bit, because you'd end up playing Blood and Honor stuff and Fash Wave and stuff like that, I suppose. So maybe it's better to keep to classical. But I'm sure that if you got a radio station, people would start making music to get on the station. It would encourage bands to actually create music for that station.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, this feels like, like last generation. I feel like with, the horses bolted, we're in another era now. It's all about the internet. I mean, I just don't see how it's going to happen. I think you get shut down. I think the entry cost of doing something like that, this material setup, is enormous. The risk that you're undertaking, it's too risky. It's not going to happen. If it does happen, good on you. Go for it.
As I said, I mean, the radio thing is a later addition. When things get more amenable to that sort of thing.
I know you laughed at it or you raspberried at it a few moments ago, but like,
you're not going to talk about millennial again, are you?
Yeah, I do make the point of that there is millennial because it is an example of what could be built. This is why I'm saying it, David, that it's an example of somebody, like, whatever you think of him, and that Millennial Woes has built this thing that he does once a year, and he gets people to it, and he gets some eyeballs on it. And so it's an example of that today, for free, using free tools, people can create something, if, with a bit of effort.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is an example. That's true. It's not an ideal example by any stretch of the imagination, because, frankly, he's a basket case. But
he just does interviews.
It's got.
They're all softball interviews.
It's got good graphics.
Softball interview.
Yeah, it's got good graphics. But you need something more than just interviews, is what I'm saying. So the thing about an online newspaper is you would actually report just like any other newspaper, except from a different perspective.
Sure.
And then, of course,
so in a way,
you can link to those kind of podcasts and so on, because you always have advertising. and and then they would feed into you. It's reciprocal. So they would advertise you as you are advertising them, and so on, and so it builds in that way. You would have to be wary about what you advertise and who, of course. That's the other stickler. But
so the modern day phenomenon, the modern day version of all this, are people, in a way. Hey, let's toot my own horn, and mine and Brutus's. So in a way, like what Brutus and I are doing, once a week with the Anglo Gang stream, is like a modern day version of this. So we do the news, and we talk about like the last what's been going on in the last 7 days for 3 hours.
It's a talk show, and there are many of them. Red Ice is probably the biggest.
Yes.
So the problem with a lot of them is that they enjoy wallowing in bad news porn, as I call it.
Yes.
And we can't afford to do that because it will basically depress us. It will demotivate us. So you have to have a certain balance between, what's bad and also some uplifting stuff. And that's something I've always maintained, that it's not enough to wallow in bad news porn, because it will create apathy.
Yeah, I don't like that kind of stuff either. I don't like it either. In a way, you have to talk about the kind of events that are happening, but it's like there's people who are always talking about, like, I know, rape gangs and stuff or whatever. If that's like all you're thinking about, that's the world that you inhabit, and you, in a weird way, are like inflicting that on people even worse. And it's
just addressing Miami Virtue there. Says Woes is doing a series of essays on Tony Harrison. I didn't know. I knew him at one time, actually. I don't know if he's still alive. His most famous poem is V, which is about a skinhead in a graveyard.
Right. Never heard of him.
Anyway. An interesting one called the Rhubarbarians as well. He writes in dialect sometimes. As I say, he's from Leeds.
Yeah. What did you think about the Miami Virtue? Here talks about how Red Ice used to focus on woo-woo. They say like conspiracy stuff. Actually, what they did, they turned from conspiratainment stuff into the racial politics. And in my opinion, actually, keeping a blend of keeping the woo-woo shit would have probably been smarter, whilst just like feeding in 10% racial politics. And I think actually you could have maybe done more good. I often think about this. I often think about what would I have done differently if I was starting out again. And what I would have done is like a sports channel with like 5% nationalist propaganda in it.
Yeah. Coming back to the plan, one thing that we should be doing is aping the Irish nationalist plan.
Yeah,
because it worked. So you create clubs, basically, athletics clubs and so on, sports clubs, basically. You create literary clubs, writers' circles, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You create hedge schools. As I say, this is when things get going. You need to start the ball rolling, which is why, I keep harping on about the online newspaper. Because it's you need a starting point. once the ball starts rolling, it'll attract more and more people. And then you can start other things like writers' circles, like, art exhibitions, like sports associations, like, the stuff that you've just mentioned. But as I say, sports articles, absolutely, the online newspaper would have that because it would report on everything.
Yeah, the reason I say,
I just want to address Miami Virtue again, because talking about Harrison, the most interesting guy from Yorkshire, the writer, is David Story. Sadly died about 4 or 5 years ago. He was the last proper rightist in the mainstream media, mainstream literature, I should say. And his works are very good. He won prizes and everything. Particularly This Sporting Life is an excellent book. Not just because it's right wing. He had a long sort of working relationship with Lindsay Anderson, the director and theatre producer. And one of the interesting things about This Sporting Life is that for the film that was scripted by David Story himself and was directed by Lindsay Anderson, a lot of the context has disappeared. For example, the N-word disappears, and the fact that that the guy who is actually quite a nasty piece of work as a central character, and it's because he apes Jack Johnson as his hero. The black boxer, although he's a rugby league player. And it's this sort of critique of black American culture. It becomes more apparent in a book that he later wrote called Present Times, in which there is a, shall we say, a stereotypical Jewish character in it, and also addresses the problems of blacks in society as well, particularly entering white working class and middle class society. So
what did you mean? What did you mean by
he was,
the N? Oh,
what?
sorry.
Sorry, what?
I was just going to say, what did you mean by when you said the N-word disappears?
In the book, the N-word is there in full, but
right.
for the film, it is not mentioned at all.
Okay, I got you. Right.
As I say, in present times, there is a Jewish figure there who is seen to be running things at the school where his children are being taught, the central character in that particular book. But David Story was influenced because he did a lot of things. He was an artist, a playwright, and a novelist, and successful at them all. He was at the Slade as an artist under Lucian Freud. He studied under, and had art exhibitions. He financed himself through college by playing professional rugby league. Interestingly, it's from Wakefield.
Oh, really? Even that doesn't pay very well.
Well, as I say, paid enough at the time, but he was
as much as a fireman, doesn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's enough to get him through college anyway. But he was influenced by Wyndham Lewis, and he was sort of forced to disavow his politics in a BBC interview in the early 2000s, I remember. But Miami Virtue says interesting. We'll look it up. He's a good writer anyway.
Was
Yes.
Was a good writer.
Well, is, these people never die.
They live on.
It's like saying, Shakespeare is a good writer.
True. True.
But anyway, yeah, back to the script. We were talking about the
The plan.
Irish nationalism, particularly, and aping Irish nationalism. Obviously, not the terroristic aspects of that, by the way.
Man of Virtue keeps saying good things. He mentioned something about that. How like Irish export, where is it? He said something about how the Irish abroad are not thought of for terrorism. They're thought of for like Gaelic and the leprechauns and or whatever. Oh yeah, here we go. Indeed, internationally, people don't equate Irish nationals with violence. They equate them with river dancing, Gaelic poetry, GAA, having the crack,
Yeah,
etc.
GAA is the Gaelic Athletics Association.
Okay. So, what's the point there then? Cultural export. But
Yeah,
actually, it's
in other words,
nationalistic.
you have to sort of ape the kinds of clubs and societies and so on that they had, as a sort of closed shop against the establishment, as a shadow of the establishment structures of society, of course, because you need to do that before you actually take over. At some point, people will say, well, actually, these people are already running things.
When you talk about Irish nationalists, who are you talking about? Because I only think of like Sinn Féin,
No.
who are
I'm certainly not
Marxists,
talking about
aren't
them,
they?
of course. No.
They're
Not talk.
Marxists, right?
Yeah, absolutely are. Yes. And a set of bastards. I actually met Jerry Adams. What an arsehole he is. But anyway, going back to to the figures. So people forget that people like W.B. Yeats was a serious figure
Oh,
in
okay.
Irish nationalism.
Right.
The poet and writer and esoterist and so on. And the people around him.
At school, they taught us Seamus Heaney.
Oh, I hate him.
That's probably why they taught us him, to be fair.
Yeah,
Probably,
he's one of those. Oh, my dad was he dug peat, and
Yeah.
and he was so much better than me. I'm just this. I'm just a boy with a pen,
Yeah.
Well, why
And
don't you do some?
I'll dig with it.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right. That's the point. I've got his version of Beowulf as well, which I don't reckon much, to be quite honest. I would love for Tolkien's translation of Beowulf to be published. I don't think it ever has been, but I know that he translated it. I've seen sections from it,
Right.
but for some reason it's never been published. But yeah, Heaney is awful, and he did this translation of Beowulf, which isn't really a translation. He throws all kinds of Irish words in and stuff, and plays with the verse and stuff like that, and does all kinds of things. And he got prizes for it. I think he won the Whitbread Prize. But no, I've never rated him as a poet, to be honest. The thing is that nowadays poets are so bad that even mediocre ones look good. How does even before that Scottish lesbian got the Poets Laureate's job, what was she called? Can't remember. But anyway, the one before her, Andrew Motion, was so mediocre.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing. The last decent poet laureate was Ted Hughes. I don't just say that because he's Yorkshireman and so on, but he was a decent poet. But even he was nowhere near as good as the likes of Tennyson, the previous poet laureates and so on.
Yes. Yeah.
So Although,
Charge of the Light Brigade.
yeah, and very right wing as well. Although even Ted Hughes has some fascistic tendencies. Certainly in his Hawk,
Well,
Hawk roosting, I think it is that he wrote. Oh, Benjamin Zephaniah, someone's mentioned in the comment section. Don't get me started.
We had to do him at school.
He died last year or something. Yes, good riddance.
Oh no, I don't think it was him we had to do at school. It was someone else.
Yes, Miami Virtue has reminded me of the Scottish lesbian, Carol Ann Duffy. That's her.
Carol Ann Duffy. We did her as well. Yeah, she would write about her vagina.
Yeah, she also wrote this homage to some kind of murderer or something. Yeah, it's the typical sort of leftist obsession with criminals.
Yeah.
You're getting tired, aren't you?
Well, David, it is.
Bed.
Yeah, it is. It is past midnight here. I said I'd do an hour. I said, "Come on, we'll do it, David. Let's just." I've got an hour spare, and it's been like 2 hours 45 minutes.
Yes.
So, I think we'll call it at that then, David. If you're good with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a decent chat.
Excellent. So,
well, I thought it was, but you've only got four likes. I'll tell you what, I'll add a like, and then you've got 5. There you go.
Wow, I'm feeling good. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the very first.
That's the kudos. That's the kudos that you get from me. 5 likes. There you go.
Wow. And we've got like 25 solid viewers. Incredible. So
I know.
I feel like I'm losing my voice tonight. I hope this isn't a bad sign. I hope I'm not coming down with something. But I'm not used to doing like a solo show in a while, so maybe it's just like talking too much. I should have just let you talk, really.
I don't know. I could have held the conversation. I mean, I think people would have been asleep by now if I'd have gone into monologue mode.
I'll give over. David is on Twitter, aren't you?
Yes, or is it Twitter? I can't remember.
It's X. In fact, David is on X.
It'll be X when they fucking ban me, I can tell you that.
Here is David on X, and you should follow him. It's at Mjolnir Mag. Okay, and here is the link in the chat. So you should follow him on X, and you should follow him on his new YouTube channel, which is Mjolnir at the Movies. It's not his new YouTube channel. It's his old YouTube channel. But here it is. And we'll put that link in the chat as well.
Back catalogue of film reviews on there.
Wow. See, you and Millennial Woes have more in common than you thought.
Why?
Well, he does movie stuff as well, doesn't he? He's into art. He's an art student, David. He went to art college, didn't he?
Great.
All right. So, David, thanks for coming on for the first SJJMAS.
Oh, dear.
All right. I actually chose the thumbnail because that's what I actually imagine you to look like, a Father Christmas. So I know probably nowhere near, but
well, you know that Father Christmas, as he's called, is actually based on Odin.
True. Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
The Yule Father.
Yeah. So that's what I pictured that I was talking to whilst I was doing the stream. Okay. All right, everybody. It's been fun. Give the stream a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next one. If anybody else decides to come on, SJJMAS or whatever I end up calling this thing. All right. Thanks for coming, David.
You're welcome. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Bye, everybody.